This is the Conscious Radio Network.
All right. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's weekly podcast series, The Weekly Seance. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Mekas. If this is your first time, click subscribe, like, share, and comment. Now, briefly, stay tuned. Next Monday, we will have on Victoria Anderson. What is the paranormal realm trying to tell you? Then the week after that, we'll have Gloria Haas back on. The pros and cons of CE5 gatherings. What is that? Tune in and you will find out. Now, tonight is going to
be an interesting night. A very interesting night. You know, we may have left the spookiness of the Halloween season, but the paranormal is all around. Tonight, you may want to rethink to expand on a year-round option. We are joined with paranormal investigator Aaron Hoffman to discuss a little bit on his experiences and the work he has done thus far. He is the creator and founder of A View Beyond Paranormal Magazine and host of Spectre Radio, a paranormal podcast. What are your experiences with disembodied spirits? Are they mild or were they horrific? Tonight, we will discuss some true stories. Let's welcome Aaron Hoffman to the Weekly Seance.
Woohoo! How you doing? Welcome.
Doing pretty well.
First time I did that opening. Ooh. All right. So this is your first time on the show. Welcome, Aaron.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Very welcome. Very welcome. So I've always wanted to get some more paranormal content here on the show, and this is a night I was trying to dig into and trying to get a lot of this for Halloween. Mm-hmm. But hence, paranormal happens all the time. It doesn't have to be Halloween, but it's fun to kind of do the Halloween thing. So where should we start? How did you get into this?
Well, hindsight, I was actually a pretty weird kid. And while all the other kids my age in my neighborhood were playing baseball, basketball, football, I was riding my bike up to the library and getting every book I could on unsolved mysteries, cryptids and legends and all that. And then once in my teen years, we started to go to these places in St. Paul, Minnesota called the Wabasha Street Caves.
Yeah.
And these caves have a really interesting history. They're all caves that were carved out by the Mississippi River at one point. Huh. And these caves were used during the Prohibition to hide bootleg alcohol, hide from the state police. They, run up the river, just the boat, book it up the bluff into the caves and would hide out there. And then in the 80s and 90s is when things started to get really weird for this place. It was pretty common to go up there and find people living in the caves, or I don't want to say satanic, because there were a couple, but it was mostly pagan practices that would happen in the cave.
Yeah.
You'd find artifacts and rituals and carvings all over. And in my teen years, we went up there and we had a couple encounters. One of them, we were going into this cave that had somehow collapsed in on itself, but the main openings were still accessible. Mm-hmm. And I looked up and I swore I was seeing figures around the mouth of the opening in the ceiling.
Yeah.
And so I freaked out. I'm like, get my friend. I'm like, dude, we got to go.
Yeah, we're booking it.
Yeah. And the thing is, our friend Jody was with us. He is 6'7", scared of nothing.
Wow.
But I've never seen him haul down that road like that before.
Wow.
So that was the first experience. And ever since then, it just kind of, gradually built and had more encounters, and I've learned more things. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've had people like that on my cruise in the past where, they are rock solid. They're the Hulk. Nothing could budge them. But when somebody is experiencing something paranormal or supernatural, anything, not deja vu or anything, but yeah, when it comes to ghosts or spirits and stuff like that, or poltergeistic activity and stuff, I see these people just run for the freaking hills, man. They're running like a 12-year-old schoolgirl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as far as like poltergeists, have you experienced any poltergeistic activity in any of your and not necessarily some of the investigations, but
shortly after my wife and I got married, we were homeless for the first 6 years of our marriage, and we were staying with a friend of mine, and he had this house that he was renting from somebody else. Him and his kid took the upstairs. My wife and I took the basement. The basement had areas that had been, built so that they could be used as living quarters.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we had our own room, our own bathroom, everything was fine. He took his kid and went to his girlfriend one weekend. So, just my wife and I. And she was telling me about some of the experiences she was having in that place. She was like, I swear, every once in a while, I stand by the stairs and I'll see somebody at the top.
Yeah.
There'd be a silhouette of somebody up there. And then I would hear knocking. And this would be where I started to develop my first instinct as a paranormal investigator. I started looking for explanations. And in Minnesota, we have the kind of weather that affects some of these older housing to have like old copper pipe. When you run a hot water in the middle of January and you turn that water off as it cools, that pipe contracts and it starts to bang up on the inside of walls.
Oh, yeah.
So I was explaining that to my wife, and all of a sudden, there was this loud thud from upstairs and footsteps running down the hallway. And I looked at my wife, and I'm like, we're the only ones here. So I ran upstairs, went down the same hallway. I checked all the bedrooms, checked all the closets, looked under all the beds, didn't find anybody. And in Minnesota, during the wintertime, we put plastic film over our windows to keep the draft out.
Yeah.
All the plastic film was still intact. And the only way you can get up into the attic is to open up the closet in the master bedroom, pull out all the shelves, and then pop the entryway, which is badly warped because of the weather conditions. So it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
That door was still there. So that was probably the most intense poltergeist type activity I've ever encountered.
Huh. Now,
just because of how loud it was.
Yeah, yeah. Now with these anomalous activities, or actually they're natural as far as like the plumbing and stuff like that, structural consistencies that happen or inconsistencies that happen and stuff like that. I mean, we don't experience anything like this in the deep South, but yeah, definitely up north and the old copper pipes and stuff like that, the metal and whatnot. Is that something that you guys kind of first, you guys have to first rule that out, or you got to check? Okay, it's kind of like going in as a real estate agent. You're going and you're trying to get as much information about the structure. Like, okay, you got metal pipes. Do you got this? Do you got that? What type of floors? What type of wooded floors? What type of, and just kind of rule all that out and try to get baseline information first.
Absolutely. I lived in Louisiana for 8 years, so I mean, I know, how consistent the weather is down there. So you won't get that much environmentally influenced impact on home as much. You get a little bit, but not as much. In Minnesota, we get triple-digit summers, and then we'll get winters where I've been in cases where it was 45 below zero.
Whoa.
Yeah. So when you have extremes like that is hell on wooden home.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why when we get to these older homes, that's the first thing we're looking at. How old is the house? What's its main material? What are the pipes like? What are the electricals like? Because you get these old homes that have the old heavy gauge copper wires that's pumping out a lot of electricity raw, unrestricted. that can affect EM detection.
Yeah.
We've had
Yeah.
EM meters go off, and it all it was just near an old junction point.
Yeah. 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 Baseline, trying to get as much baseline information first can be tricky because, yeah, you got to get a lot of information first and structurally and then now, how much do you dig into the past of the property, past history of the property?
I do as much as I can, because I feel like what these reality shows don't show is how much work you have to put into preparing for an investigation.
Yeah.
The research that we have to do. Like when somebody say they have an old home, and they're experiencing something. Okay, well, we look at when was the house built, who owned it, are there any unknown or any documented death. That's another thing that's very important for us, is finding documentation if it's possible.
Yeah.
I know in a lot of places, like in the old mining town, any kind of murders or death records are very sketchy because they're not permanent establishment.
Yeah.
But yeah, so research is very important for us. I do a lot.
Now, I'm not sure if it's like if the laws are the same in Minnesota as in Florida, but in the state of Florida, it's not required in the real estate industry to disclose information like that when they sell a house.
Right.
Or if yeah, you don't have to disclose whether there was a death in the property. You don't have to disclose whether the house is haunted.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, I have a real estate license. I don't use it, but I just keep it active. And I was like, I'm gonna start a page, a social network page. It says the Haunted Realtor, because there is a market for old homes out there that are haunted.
Absolutely.
But now it's like, whether you don't have to disclose that information, it depends on the house, and it depends on the clients, or the people who want to buy it. But so when you dig for this information, you go through like police records or city records.
Well, I've learned that these records, sometimes you're not going to find anything, simply because there are certain situations that are they're considered open cases or ongoing investigation. So there's information that won't be made public because they're still trying to, keep everything on the down low so that they can try to solve it without outside interference.
Cold cases.
Yep. And when it comes to like city records, depending on where you're at or where the investigation going to take place, it can be sketchy because not every county department will have digitized all their old records. So sometimes that required a little footwork going down to the county or to the local historical society or the library and digging through what they have, hard copies.
Yeah, and depending on how old the property is. I mean, shoot, You're going back to like late 1800s, early 1900s. Good luck. You're going to get stuff on like microfilm or something.
Yeah, there's those, and then there's also the if you go out like towards upper northeast, the original 13 colony.
Yeah,
you start looking at homes that go back to like 1700.
Ooh, yeah. Connecticut, Maine, upper New York, Pennsylvania. Yeah. What locations? What was the what's been the most active location that you've researched and investigated so far?
Oh man.
Hard question, right? Pretty much most of them are all active. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there.
Yeah, I have one in mind, but this is a tricky place to explain. And I have some clips. The place is called Carlos Avery Wildlife Management Area. It's a nature reserve.
Mhm.
They do allow hunting on there during deer season. And what's crazy is this place is nowhere on the paranormal radar for people to investigate.
Yeah.
And it has a gruesome history. There was a double murder that took place in 1912.
Mm.
And this was during the time, when times were tough, people were looking to be farmhand, traveling, whatever. A farmhand murdered a farmer's wife and another farmhand. And when he
Wow.
was questioned about it, they said, "Why did you do it?" And he said, "I don't know why I did it. I just felt like doing it. I
Mm.
can't explain it." Um, and in 1954, there was a shootout between three brothers and the Minnesota State Troopers. These three brothers were bootleggers. They were like the gangsters you saw in the old 50s TV shows or movies.
Yeah.
Bad guys. Two of the brothers died. In 1980, this case from the next case really was hard to investigate. In 1980, a 6-year-old boy, well, step back a little bit, a guy by the name of Ming Shui kidnapped a woman that was his former teacher and her daughter. Took her to a place and assaulted her repeatedly, recorded it on video, on a VHS video camera,
Wow.
and he went to go kill them. Well, the mother and daughter were making so much noise in the trunk that he stopped and opened up the trunk and yelled at them. 6-year-old Jason Wilkman rode up on his bike to see what the commotion was, and the guy kidnapped him.
Mm.
Drove him out to the wildlife management area and beat him to death with a tire iron.
Damn.
6 years old. In 1989, a woman who was a victim of a domestic violence, a bad relationship, she was burned alive out there.
Eee.
And then just 2 years ago in 2020, a young man by the name of Mort Seaway, he was killed out there. And so, and there's been legends about this place in the 90s that it was a body dump for local motorcycle gang. I cannot find anything to confirm this, and nobody in law enforcement is denying it either.
Mm. Mm.
So, yeah, so this place, the fact that nobody is investigating this place blew me away.
Yeah.
And we went out there right around the time of Samhain, end of October, beginning of November. For 2 weeks, we hit that place hard, and we just got unbelievable evidence. And then by November 3rd, November 4th, gone. Nothing. It's so bizarre.
Wow. And yeah, you did come tonight with some, let me see if I can, with some media. I think you might have to request it on your end. I am not sure.
Because I can send them to you in Messenger, and you can download them from there.
Yeah, that'll probably work. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, because I mean, they're all about a minute or less, and
Yeah.
one of the interesting things that I was saying earlier about this place is while we're out there, one of the most interesting stories I've heard also is the woolly beast of Linwood. And they say this thing is just a massive deer-looking creature that nobody can catch. Nobody can shoot him. He always shows up at night at some of the most unusual times in the most unusual manner. And we've tried to catch him. We've tried to spot him, but we've never been able to. So
Yeah.
we'll go back in the spring, keep at it.
Yeah. Just keep trying. That's what people don't realize about, paranormal investigation. It can take hours and hours and hours and hours, and you're just sitting there and you're falling asleep, and just to capture a little bit of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, It really took it back to pride when we heard that.
Something to screen share. You may see if you can screen share for a second. If it doesn't work, let me, and then you can send, and then you could send it to me, and then try to screen share. It might work, but let's see.
Video share screen.
Have you ever done Waverly Hills yet?
No, that is on our list, but we've never really been able to get the money together to
yeah.
You know. There we go. All right. Okay, so it's all right, here we go. Now, I don't know if the audio will still play on this, but it's worth a shot. Now, the first one is there's a bridge in Minnesota, right on the University of Minnesota, and it's been, the bridge that's there now is actually the new bridge, but there was an old bridge that was right where it was before.
Yeah.
And between the 70s and the 90s, I believe, there have been 6 suicides. One of them was by a noted professor who was also a known poet. So he's done some work, and his name was John Berryman. This piece here is actually a voice capture of him confirming who he is, why he did it, and then there was an unusual female voice that popped in afterward. We're not exactly sure what she said, but
yeah.
So yeah, that was the suicide bridge at the University of Minnesota. Very unusual, very cool place. Unfortunately, it has become off limit because of the George Floyd riot.
Oh wow.
Cool. But these next few they come from Carlos Avery, and what, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of weird activity going on around this place. And this first one is when we actually, we believe we encountered the Okathic brothers, the guys that were killed by the state police. And we're only using the K2 at this point.
Mm.
By the Minnesota State Troopers on this road. Can you make that light up for me again, please?
So yeah, normally I'm not a big proponent for the K2 system, but sometimes the responses that you get and the timing, make for a very compelling argument.
Yeah. Yeah, I've used them a couple times, and some of them have really, yeah, like you said, the timing is interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, kind of like a handheld Ouija board. You know?
yeah. Now this next video is probably one of the most unusual EM anomalies I've encountered. And to give context, this is Carlos Avery. We're driving down one of the roads and we stopped at one of the locations where we thought, one of the crimes had been committed there. And we got this EM blast. We've not been able to explain it. The vehicle is off. The SB-11 is not close enough to interfere with it, but the thing is screaming like it's next to a reactor, and it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
No radio towers, no cell phone towers, no power box. This is
No
a
electrical
game
lines,
reserve.
Yeah. Wow. Are you able to turn the volume up on this a little bit on your end?
Now, we weren't getting anything on the SB-11, and this is why we thought it was first the SB-11, because you can see it going off right next to it.
Yeah.
But at one point, I grab it from him.
Yeah, that meter's going crazy.
Now, at this point, I'm out the window, and this is almost between 7 and 10 feet away from the SB-11.
Yeah.
And there, it's almost dead inside. But outside, it's hot.
Yeah.
So
it's
yeah,
picking up a lot.
right. And it moved. That was the other thing that we noticed about this, because we tracked it moving in several spots along that dirt road.
Yeah. Huh.
And this last one here was another one that blew us away. Now this is it's like a REM pod, but he built it by hand to be more sensitive, so that outside interference wouldn't mess with it. Like sometimes you get like a little blowing leaf, and that'll trigger it if it's on the ground. Just small things like this. He calibrated this to be able to distract that out. This is by far the most compelling of all the pieces we've gotten out of this place.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the pieces that we had come out of Carlos Avery.
Yeah. Now, Carlos Avery is a nature preserve, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So yeah, I mean that, and I don't know how to turn this screen share off.
Oh, let me see here. Hide from screen. There we go.
All right,
Cool, yeah.
but yeah,
So this Carlos Avery Nature Preserve seems to be a like I said, it's a hotbed of so much history in the past. I mean,
Mhm.
from murders to disappearances to, and he said apparently there's probably more bodies hidden there somewhere because it's been a dumping ground. Since you said the 50s or something like that, or
between the 50s and the 90s.
wow. Eesh.
Yeah, and if you ask some of the people that have been there for a long time, like say about 40 years or up,
Mhm.
you ask them what's the most common thing that people say around there, and it's the saying, Carlos Avery has a lot of holes.
Wow. What
Yeah.
what's it? Obviously, it sounds like a person's name. I would assume it's named after Carlos Avery.
Yeah, it was named after a Minnesota senator who helped Minnesota establish um, a series of laws and bills to help preserve certain wildlife areas. So, and that was he was around the 1850s, but it wasn't really named Carlos Avery Wildlife Management until the 1920s.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. So so you have a group of you have a group called A View Beyond. Wait, no, A View Beyond Paranormal is the magazine, but let's
Yes.
get into that. So A View Beyond Paranormal magazine is a magazine. It's a digital or online magazine that people can subscribe to, and or other investigators can go on and share their information and their network. And basically, it's a really cool networking opportunity for the paranormal community. And talk a little bit about the magazine.
Okay. Well, the magazine, my goal for that is to be a magazine for the community by the community. And what I mean by that is that anybody is allowed to email me with their experiences, their theories. Um, they can advertise their paranormal investigation team. Excuse me. And basically anything that is paranormal related. If there's something you're interested in, if you can write it up, get it to me and I can put it in the magazine. I want this to be an open forum because there are so many ideas, so many experiences out there. And nothing against Facebook, but Facebook, you kind of have to look for them.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I mean, I didn't find out about the Minnesota Paranormal Society until a year and a half after I've been investigating.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so I met a lot of great people, and I just want to be able to get people to just come together and talk. Because if we're ever going to get the paranormal field recognized as something worth looking into, even potentially becoming a legitimate field of study, we need to come together. We need to get our evidence together, talk about the data, come up with new technologies. And I go to Barnes & Noble a lot, and I was looking for literature on things like that, and I couldn't find any. And I'm walking out of there, and I'm griping to my wife, and she looked at me and goes, "You have a degree in graphic communications. Why don't you just start one?"
Yeah.
So that's how it came about. So I try to make articles about, location, technique, even equipment. I've met a lot of new teams out there that just have no idea what they're looking for or what to get. So I want to try to give them something that'll help them get started and go in the right direction.
Yeah. Now, if somebody's interested in being in the magazine, I do have your information here. I can scroll in the bottom. What's the best way to get a hold of you? Email, Facebook, or the website?
Well, I'm home all the time.
All right.
Now. Either any of those would work.
Okay, because I got the website here, which is avbmagazine.com.
Mm-hmm.
Got that one.
Yep, you can message me there. You can email me at aviewbeyondmagazine@gmail.com. You can also, if you can find, it's easy to find. If you type in a view beyond the group, that's the actual name. That's a group that people can join, and they can post stuff up there, their experiences, their theories. So that's another way to get a hold of me.
Right. Cool. And that's your Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All right. That's yeah. I'll just I'll let those scroll a couple times and then do switch that way. People get see different portions.
Right.
Let's see. So on the Facebook page, let me show that one up there. Cool. A View Beyond the Group is where you can find them on YouTube. Now, if anybody that's watching, especially live, I mean, I'd say you can call, but it's best to call the show when you're live. Because normally people do call into the show. So if anybody does have any paranormal questions and stuff with the work that Aaron does, you're welcome to call the show, 407-636-1157. Now, what seems to be the most active time of the year for you?
I've learned that a lot of times, depending on the kind of haunting it is, some hauntings are pretty consistent year-round. Other hauntings happen during certain astronomical events, like Mercury being in retrograde.
Yeah.
And some events happen at times like during Samhain, October 31st and November 1st, the spring equinox, things like that. So, again, depending on the haunting you're looking for, it could be any time of year, really.
Yeah, I've noticed that and during Samhain is definitely, because when I was more into the paranormal investigation, when I started Claremont Paranormal years ago, was it 2012? Yeah, 2012. When I had launched it for the first 3 to 5 years, guaranteed every Halloween, moving into October, and probably first, second, third week into November. Those 2 months, so active.
Absolutely.
I've always email after email after email of clients just calling or emailing, say, hey, I've got this, I got that. And then you start to learn through the investigation that they've always been experiencing this, but they somehow decided to choose to get a hold of you during Halloween because, I don't know,
yeah, I think, with Halloween or Samhain, a lot of times, even the activity that's pretty consistent year round becomes more intense during that 2 month period.
Yeah. The veil is a lot thinner though too. Even through mediums or through psychic mediumship or every medium that I work with, including myself, that seems to be the easiest time to do readings or to tap into the other side, and to communicate is when that veil is thin like that.
Right.
That's when all the activity just seems to be, and like you said, the activity seems to be it is all year round. It's just we seem to notice it more during that time of the year because it is a thinner veil.
Yeah, and that time of year, it gets a little uncomfortable for me because of certain negative events that is associated with Halloween. I used to get into demonic practices, demonology. I got into Druidism for a while, and I made a lot of bad choices in paranormal behavior.
Yeah.
And it got so bad that when one day I just had enough and I tried to seek spiritual help. And there was a lady at our church, said, yeah, come back here, let's talk, we'll pray.
Yeah.
And she reached out to put her hands on me, and all of a sudden she just pulled it back and she just looked at me and she said, you have a darkness about you. That scared me, because if something is that bad, where somebody who is not a psychic all of a sudden gets that vibe right away.
Yeah.
So it took me several months to finally break free of that. But I feel like it's left scars, because when I get around anything that's demonic, I almost feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Now, have you noticed working in this field for a certain amount of time that you become a little bit more heightened, your senses are a little bit more heightened, or you're start to realize that it's starting to turn on these intuitive gifts to be able to opening up the third eye, so to speak, to be able to maybe communicate with spirits rather than having to use the toys?
yeah, I absolutely believe that, because when you look through historical document, you find that there was a lot more credible resources for people that were able to engage in such practices.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there was a point where we begin to tell our children that, oh, it's not really like that. Then it becomes, well, it's half fake. And then it becomes, well, that's just not real at all.
Yeah.
So somehow we've managed to trick ourselves into thinking that, psychic abilities aren't real. But now that as technology develop and it's starting to, validate some of the claims,
Yeah.
people are starting to realize, okay, well, maybe there's something here. I'm convinced that it's actually, I want to say, it's part of our evolutionary process, that we've somehow just ignored it. But it's always been there. Some people are more able to do it successfully, others not so much. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I've always felt this way too, and see if you agree that it seems like anybody that's wanting to get into the paranormal investigative field, it's almost the same as like somebody who wants to become a medium. That once you slowly start opening up that door, you're now opening up the ability. You're giving the universe, and you're telling God, hey, I want to turn this on. But once you slowly turn that spigot on, you slowly open up that door, even through mediumship and stuff like that. When you open up that door, you never really do close it.
right.
You can turn it off or put it on silent mode, but you never really do close that door again. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. Like I said, I've always been interested in the paranormal, but it wasn't until I began to get into the investigation and research that I've become more aware of things to look for.
Yeah.
But I also become more aware of what I feel when I'm in certain areas.
Yeah.
I will not consider myself a psychic. I don't think I am, but I am. Some people call it empathic or sensitive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've gone to places and I've been like, you know what, I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
all the equipment confirms it, nothing showing up on the equipment. But I've also gone in places where it's like, okay, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable right now. And yeah, everything going off. We're getting
Yeah.
EVP,
Yeah.
senses are going off. So,
Yeah, you definitely feel the energy. It's like, whoa, what the
Mhm.
hell happened in this room? Yeah, it is amazing. So let's see. I just had a thought and I lost it. God dang it.
Oh, sorry.
Let's see. No, it wasn't that. It was like, yeah, I guess it wasn't meant to be. Now with the with the investigations that you've done thus far, have you had anything follow you? Have you had something that has made a spiritual impression on you, where weeks later or months later, something, lack of a better word, no pun intended, has haunted you from a past
Well,
investigation?
there are two instances. One of them was very brief. It didn't last very long. It didn't last past the investigation. We investigated a cemetery in Rochester, Minnesota, and we were leaving, and we had a voice come through. I can't remember which device it was, but a voice come through and said, take me with you.
Mm.
And we had to stop and we had to say, look, we'll come back, but you cannot come with us. And sure enough, it didn't. And whatever activity was there, it stopped showing up on our equipment.
Yeah.
The other one, this one actually left a very strong impression on me, and it still does. It's a cemetery not too far from where I live, and it's called the Garden of Remembrance. And it is a cemetery of young adults and children from the 1800s to about the 1940s. These children had mental disabilities, but a majority of them were also deaf. I myself am 60% deaf, and I went to the same school in Faribault as some of the kids went to. When we went there and I started to talk to them in sign language and introduce myself, we couldn't get them to leave the K2 alone. We couldn't get them to leave any of the equipment alone. They were draining all my camera batteries instantaneously.
Wow.
And yeah, every time I go there, I feel this overwhelming sense of not just gratitude that they're able to talk to somebody who understands what they went through, but I get all the feeling of what they went through at that time, being abandoned, being dropped off because parents couldn't handle a kid who was mentally disabled or hearing impaired or whatever. And health treatment back then wasn't that good.
Yeah.
A lot of neglect. So, yeah, even now when I think about it, it right now it feels like there's something right in the middle of my chest and it's trying to expand or spread.
Yeah.
Almost a sadness. But yeah, that one had the most profound impact.
Wow. Now, is there a certain practice that you do before you go on investigations for protection?
One, being a Christian, I have my prayers, but I also feel that a lot of times if you go in and introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm not here to start any trouble. I just want to tell your story. I want you to be remembered. You are less likely to encounter a bad situation.
Yeah.
It's not a guarantee, but you can, improve your odds.
Yeah. I kind of, it's nothing like everybody sees in Hollywood. It's, we go in and, like you said, you introduce yourself. You go in like a complete stranger. You introduce yourself like a handshake, and with love from the heart, and respect, and say, hey, we're here for, we're here. We mean you no harm. We're just looking around.
Right.
If you want to make yourself known, make yourself present so we can communicate with you, please do. Here are the tools that we brought with us for you to be able to communicate. Because sometimes they can't see them. Sometimes you have to kind of let them know specific things, and then they're like, oh, like you'll have the K2 meter. So let me know if you've experienced this. Like the K2 meter will be sitting there not doing anything for half the night, and then suddenly someone goes, hey, we got a K2 meter sitting down here in front of me, blah blah blah, and then suddenly it goes wild.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's that, and people forget that a lot of these spirits were alive.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it surprised that these spirits would have the same behavior trait in the spirit form as they would when they were alive? And what we also do is, instead of just saying the usual, is there anybody here? What's your name? Do you know your dad? Sometimes we'll just say like, so what was it like back then? Did you smoke? What was the whiskey like? If we go to a place that during the Prohibition, we're like, what was the whiskey like?
Yeah.
What was the music like? We ask them about their life, not just prove your existence.
Have you noticed that we used to do this not a lot, but I started doing playing music. Like if I'd get an idea of, okay, how old is the property? Does it go back to the 1930s and the 1920s or 40s and stuff like that? And what I'll do is I'll try to capture some music from that time, and I'll start playing it. And then as soon as you start playing that music, and you light a candle or something and whatnot, and then you'll start feeling the activity starting to pick up. Have you ever done that?
Yeah, we did that at Carlos David with the Catholic Brothers. We played some music from the 50s.
Nice.
We also did another sound experiment. I don't know how far some people would get into this, but there is a belief that there are 9 core frequencies that makes up the universe. And it is believed that one of those frequencies is 528 hertz.
Mm.
And I found one that was a really good binaural beat. It was just that frequency. And we drove through and we played it. Well, while we're getting activity on our equipment, the animals responded. We were getting animals that we would never see flying in front of us as we're walking down the road. The tree frogs everywhere would not stop.
Wow.
Eagles were flying. I mean, and it's almost rare to see them out there, but we were seeing them like it was an everyday thing. As soon as we turn off the music, dead silent across that reserve.
Whoa. 529 hertz?
528.
528.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, because I've noticed too. I've heard about this quite a few years ago, and I heard it come up every now and. It's been a while since I've actually been in the investigating aspect. But the same thing when it goes to the radios, or your spirit boxes, and you're starting to use your the radio, the hacked radios, that there is a sweet spot in that radio frequency in the AM, if you're using the AM field. And there's a very specific small bandwidth there that where they come through. But it has to cycle all the time in order for them to pick that up and for them to hone in on that particular frequency. Well,
yeah. And I totally believe that, because when you're using the SP7 or the SP11, you also notice that not only is it how often you cycle through, but how fast you cycle through. Because sometimes when I'm using it, if it's too slow, I won't get anything. If it's too fast, I won't get anything. But if there's a certain sweep rate for that, it hit that specific frequency at just the right time on a regular basis, then you're more likely to get those responses through the SP7 or the SP11.
Yeah. And a lot of our guests too, or not a guest, but a lot of our listeners too, gotta remember too. I've learned this through mediumship and through channeling too, is the spirit realm on that side, or many sides, is that they're at a very, 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 very high frequency. Everything is very quick. It's very, very fast. And when their voices come in, or they're trying to communicate through radio or through any type of electronical means, it's very fast. So we have to afterwards, we got to go back and we have to slow it down a little bit. And then you can actually start to hear the utterances and voices through those captures.
Right.
Like through the EVPs. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, on our side, we actually have to speed things up. We have to raise our vibration. They have to drop their vibration so it can meet in the middle.
Mhm.
But so where do you guys plan on investigating next? What are some of the big things
Well,
on the list?
I mean, we disbanded the group just because it just life gets in the way. But
Yeah.
we do talk about, we still want to get out to places. Waverly Hills is one of them. Brushy Mountain, prison.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's one
I
in
know.
I think one is in Illinois, I think it's Bachelor's Grove, which is a cemetery.
Okay.
I think it is. I think it's called Bachelor's Grove. Yeah. But yeah, it's a really well, what cemetery isn't old?
Right.
But this one, like, I'm not sure how far this goes back, but it goes back a long, long time. But,
Yeah. There is a place in Minnesota called Gray Cloud Island, and it's a small town built on top of Native American burial mound.
mm,
And these people are aware of what this place is and its significance, that the town folk will literally chase paranormal investigators out of town,
whoa.
off the island.
Yeah.
They don't want people disturbing the mound. They don't want people disturbing the cemetery. There is a cemetery where 7 nuns are buried, and one of them dates back to the 1700s, which is unusual because Minnesota wasn't recognized as a state until the 1850s,
Yeah.
1830s, 1850s. So yeah, it's a really strange place. But the legend of that place is if you walk down the length, you'll count 11. But when you walk back, you only count 10.
Hmm.
And I've been wanting to get out there, but can't do it without being chased off, especially now that Minnesota is an open carry and conceal.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow. So it's almost like there's like a portal or something like that you lose, that you would lose time. And
Yep.
yeah, because you said going one way is 11, coming back is 10.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like almost as though time is speeding up when you're going one direction, but it's slowing down as you're going the opposite direction,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. If that makes Huh. And that's the thing too. Not only is it spirits that you encounter, you also encounter metaphysical activity, or things that you can't explain. Maybe time warps, or just very interesting, unusual thing. Because there's this place called, oh man, I can't even forget the hill, Spook Hill, here in Florida. And if you park your car on the hill, the car going up, it'll actually start rolling up the hill.
Right.
It's weird.
Gravitational distortion.
Yeah. Or there's certain places where you can walk and then suddenly you won't hear anything. No wind, no birds, no nothing. Complete silence.
Yeah.
Utter complete silence. So quiet you can hear yourself think. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Or your heartbeat. It's crazy.
Yeah. There's a place like that, Zona de Silencio.
Oh.
The zone of silence.
Yep. Zona de Silencio. Yep. They're in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's where all the rockets were going after when they were doing all the rocket testing in Los Alamos. Los Alamos. Yeah. They were shooting off rockets and stuff when they were doing testing. And like, hey, and all the rockets were overshooting and going in that way. So, UFOs. Have you encountered any activity like that? Because I mean, that's paranormal too.
Absolutely. And I actually say that in my my intro for Spectre Radio, a paranormal podcast where we talk all things paranormal, such as ghosts, cryptids, UFOs,
Yeah.
or just plain weird.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. We got to
But yeah,
collaborate because I do all kinds of, we got a lot to talk about.
absolutely. And I've never encountered anything UFO wise, but I'm not opposed to the whole UFO culture.
Yeah.
As a paranormal investigator, or as any kind of investigator, whether you're a skeptic investigator or a paranormal investigator or just scientist, whatever, you cannot approach anything logically or with any form of strict regiment and thought process, because there's a difference between fact and truth.
Mhm.
Fact changes with the revelation of new information. The truth remains constant. And science is based on fact, not truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And very strict data.
Hmm.
Very strict data. And that's the point. And and then that, like you said earlier, and that's the reason I had gotten into paranormal investigation, is to take this culture that the world sees, the mainstream sees it as a pseudoscience, and it's not. This is something that should really, really be investigated more. But trying to capture information and capture proof to be able to scientifically hand it over to the science.
Hmm.
But it's like it's hard to do that. We have to, yeah, it's really hard to
Yeah,
do.
absolutely.
Yeah.
When we first started thinking about cells and molecules, it was only a theory. It took decades, if not centuries, for the technology to be available to confirm it. Same
Yeah.
thing with the paranormal. We just don't have the tech yet to just give it that solid stamp. It's real.
Yeah. And what's amazing too is a lot of people don't know about this, but the telephone was originally invented to communicate to the dead. Alexander Graham Bell, his original idea of the telephone was because he wanted to talk to his dead ancestors,
Hmm.
or not dead ancestors, those who had passed, especially his mother.
Yeah.
Wanted to talk to him. And he believed so much in the afterlife, and he knew it. He was an investigator himself, but he's like, I want to talk to my mother. I want to talk to my ancestors. So he's like, I'm going to invent the telephone.
Right. Well, it's the same thing with, I believe his name was Harry Price. He was in the UK, and originally he started out on a mission to expose the fakes and the charlatans during the spiritualism movement in the Victorian era.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as a result, he actually helped establish a couple of institutes to study what is now called parapsychology.
Mm.
So not only did he expose fakes, but he also encountered situations that he just could not debunk. And so, really, he was the first modern paranormal investigator from the mid 1800s.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have the SPR group there in the UK, the original SPR, Society for Psychical Research, which then had the American Foundation, which is still, I think it's still in New York City, somewhere in New York. That's how Dan Aykroyd got involved in, because he saw all these magazines from the SPR group, the ASPR group, laying around the house and stuff. So he started reading them. And
Now, that's the one that's still at one of the universities, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Well, brother, it's time goes fast. Time really does go fast. And it's been we're a little over, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We can always do another show and stuff on another subject, cryptids, the next
Absolutely.
investigation, or maybe bring in some other people with you and stuff like that you've worked with in the past, that maybe do a group. a group chat, stuff like that.
Yep.
And
I can certainly do that. I've collaborated with other investigative teams.
cool, awesome. Other than that, Aaron, I do appreciate, brother. Blessings, my friend, and stick with it. Get your, start giving out merit badges to the best investigator.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
It would go a long way, if I could just get the community more active in submitting, their pieces. I mean, this magazine isn't about me; it's about the evidence.
Yeah. It's about getting the evidence out there. It's about sharing the evidence, because that's what a lot of teams have done in the past. Is they want to hide the evidence. They want to keep it from themselves.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, this is evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Let's collaborate. Let's get the stuff together and not hide it.
Absolutely.
I've seen some really, really spooky stuff where it's like, that's evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to have the cooperation too, where you've got to have corroborating evidence from different factors and stuff like that within that have been captured, in order to be able to then lay on the table going, yes, see, we got the photos, we got the videos, we've got all different collaborating or corroborating evidence based off of one event that can prove it. So that's hard to do. People don't realize it can take hours to days to months in order for us to capture all this data. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't have that time. The event is very short-lived.
Yep. Especially if you're camping out at night and you're just waiting. There's only so much darkness.
Yep.
Hence the light in the darkness.
Yep.
So awesome. Well, Aaron, you have yourself a wonderful night. Thank you for joining us, and keep me posted. And other than that, thank you again. And thank you, everybody, for joining Conscious Radio Network. Please subscribe. And until next week, we'll see you next Monday.